My name is Susan, and I'm 30 years old. I met my husband, Ethan, through a mutual friend, and after 2 years of dating, we tied the knot. While we haven't started a family yet, we've been savoring every moment of our life together. Ethan comes from a family that owns a thriving factory employing about 50 people, a business originally founded by his late father. Over the years, it has grown significantly, thanks to the hard work and dedication of everyone involved. Currently, the company is managed by Ethan's sister, Maria, who has proven to be a natural leader, unmarried and fiercely independent. Maria inherited her management skills and sharp communication abilities from their mother. From the first time I met her, Maria treated me like a sister, a warm and unexpected contrast to my own upbringing surrounded by brothers. But not all aspects of joining Ethan's family have been so welcoming. The factory is situated close to their family home, and since my father-in-law's passing, my mother-in-law has retired and taken up the role of the family matriarch. She eagerly anticipates our daily 2 p.m. coffee breaks, moments that I've come to dread. Whenever it's my turn to bring her coffee, my heart sinks, knowing the criticism that often follows. She never misses an opportunity to voice her disappointment about our decision not to have children yet. Despite it being out of our control, her remarks cut deep, and when I try to remain silent, her irritation only escalates. She's even gone so far as to question my worthiness as Ethan's wife or make cruel comments about my late parents. The tension between us stems from a misunderstanding during my first meeting with Ethan's family. When she learned that I had lost both my parents, my mother to cancer when I was 8 and my father to a heart attack at 18, her shock was evident. Though my childhood was tough, my father had been a pillar of strength, raising my brothers and me alone. I carry immense gratitude for his sacrifices and deeply regret that he passed before I could truly show my appreciation. Yet, instead of empathy, my mother-in-law's response was unusually cold. "Well, does that mean you might not live long either?" she once asked bluntly, leaving both Ethan and me stunned. Her matter-of-fact tone made her words sting even more. While Ethan tried to deflect the comment, she pressed on as if discussing some practical concern. The dynamic became even more complicated as I struggled to find my place in the family, but Maria, who had remained silent on many occasions, surprised me one day. During a particularly heated moment when my mother-in-law sought her support, Maria interrupted with uncharacteristic sharpness. "What are you even talking about? Ethan chose Susan because she's amazing. Why can't you just support them?" Her voice cut through the tension, and her firm defense silenced her mother, who clearly hadn't expected such pushback. From that moment on, the overt criticism eased, at least in the presence of others. However, subtle jabs persisted, especially during our coffee breaks. I could always sense her disappointment when I, not Maria, was the one bringing her coffee. Thankfully, Ethan and I lived separately, renting a small apartment nearby. It provided a much-needed buffer from his mother's negativity, limiting our interactions to those brief yet strained moments. But fate had other plans. When a devastating hurricane hit, it damaged our building so severely that we couldn't stay there any longer. With water leaking through the ceilings, we had no choice but to leave. Maria, ever the problem solver, suggested a temporary solution with a cheerful smile. "Why worry? Just stay with us. Your commute will only be 25 seconds now." Reluctantly, we moved in with Ethan's family. "Welcome home, Ethan. It must have been hard on you, but I'm so happy we can all live together again," my mother-in-law said warmly, directing all her affection toward her son. Ethan, visibly uncomfortable, muttered a brief response, his demeanor resembling that of a teenager forced into compliance. Then, turning to me, she added, "Oh, Susan, you're here too? I almost didn't notice. You're so quiet. You should smile more." Her attempt at lightheartedness only deepened the tension. Ethan's frustrated expression mirrored my own discomfort, highlighting the fragile dynamics of the household. Living under the same roof has been a challenge, but it's also been a lesson in resilience. Despite the difficulties, I find strength in Ethan's unwavering support and Maria's kindness. Navigating this new chapter has reminded me that family, no matter how complicated, is a blend of love, growth, and perseverance. After moving in with my in-laws, I wanted to express my gratitude on our first night by cooking dinner. I decided on a simple but satisfying menu: bread, soup, and steak. To my relief, both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law complimented the meal, which helped ease some of my nervousness. For a brief moment, I felt like I was finally breaking the ice. But just as the dinner seemed to be wrapping up, an unexpected twist caught me off guard. My mother-in-law, humming cheerfully, stood up and retrieved a container from the fridge. Returning to the table, she proceeded to generously spread its contents, jam, onto her steak. The table fell silent for a beat, everyone momentarily stunned by the sight. My husband, sitting beside me, looked visibly uncomfortable, while Maria rolled her eyes before breaking into laughter. "Mum, I swear, no one else in the world does this," she said, shaking her head. "It's simple," my mother-in-law replied with a self-satisfied smile. "When you eat something salty, you crave something sweet. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it?" I wasn't sure how to respond. Jam on steak? It was an unusual sight, to say the least, Her cheerful explanation didn't help ease the queasiness forming in my stomach. Sensing my hesitation, she beamed at me and said, "You should try it, it's delicious." I forced a polite smile, but it didn't seem to appease her. "I'm recommending it for a reason," she continued, her tone turning cryptic. "You might live longer if you follow my example." With that, she left the room, leaving an awkward silence in her wake. Both Ethan and Maria quickly apologized, clearly used to their mother's unconventional habits. Maria, grinning, shared that their mother had an insatiable sweet tooth and couldn't go a single day without indulging in something sugary. "You wouldn't believe how many cake shops I know by heart. She makes me buy them because she's too embarrassed to do it herself," she added with a chuckle. Ethan chimed in, his concern evident. "I've been worried about her diet for years, but her health reports always come back normal. It's like she's immune to consequences," he said, shaking his head. "Still, Maria gets stuck managing most of her whims." As I listened, I couldn't help but marvel at how their family had normalized these peculiar dynamics. While it was comforting to know I wasn't alone in my bewilderment, I realized that adjusting to this household might take more patience, and perhaps a stronger stomach, than I'd anticipated. Maria cheerfully declared one morning, "I think you guys will have to help out more from now on," hinting at the possibility of more lively interactions with my mother-in-law. Living with the in-laws had its ups and downs. The short commute was a blessing, but it also meant navigating a complex web of family dynamics, eccentric food habits, and unsolicited commentary, all under one roof. I found myself taking on the responsibility of household chores, trying to keep everything in order both before and after work. Despite my best efforts to engage with my mother-in-law, she often dismissed me or responded with cold indifference. Her rare words of encouragement were always followed by sharp criticisms, especially about the topic of children, during our 2 p.m. coffee breaks. The added stress of these interactions began to weigh on me, making my days increasingly difficult. My mood, too, was visibly affected. Ethan noticed the change and suggested several times that we visit a doctor together. He even proposed a weekend getaway to a hotel to escape the tension, but I declined, dismissing the idea as an unnecessary expense, especially since the nearest hotel was far away. Things took a turn for the worse when Ethan announced that he'd be going on a week-long business trip. To my dismay, he added that Maria would be accompanying him. This meant I would be alone with my mother-in-law. The thought filled me with dread. While Ethan offered to take me along, I decided to stay behind, hoping I could endure the week without falling apart. On the morning they left, Maria sent me a message titled Mother-in-Law Survival Guide. It was a lighthearted and oddly comforting read. "If anything goes wrong, just give her cake and you'll be fine." It even included a list of local cake shops and her mother's favorite selections from each. I chuckled at the guide, but it did offer some reassurance, especially as I braced myself for what promised to be a difficult week. I held on to the hope that once they returned, our home renovations would be complete, and we could return to a more peaceful living situation. However, that hope quickly faded on the first evening alone with my mother-in-law. When I returned home from work, she was waiting for me, blocking the entrance to the living room. "You know why I'm angry, don't you?" she demanded, her voice sharp. I exhaled, exasperated. "No, I'm not psychic." It turned out I had missed our usual 2 p.m. coffee break, twice, something that had slipped my mind amidst the chaos of work and household duties in the absence of both Ethan and Maria. I had hoped she might understand, given her own work experience, but instead, she lashed out at me the moment we were alone. She accused me of intentionally starting this harassment and even called me a wicked woman. I was taken aback, my mind struggling to understand why I was being treated with such hostility over something so small. I felt the tension in the air, counting the days until Ethan and Maria's return, desperately hoping this was just a phase. The situation reached a boiling point when, on a particularly tough day, I bought a cake during my lunch break and left it in the office fridge, hoping it would smooth things over with my mother-in-law. When I mentioned the cake, her demeanor shifted instantly. She smiled, her anger melting away. "Let's just forget today happened," she said with a sudden cheerfulness. "Just don't forget tomorrow, okay?" I nodded quickly, relieved for the temporary peace. From that moment on, I made sure to remember the coffee breaks, fully aware of the drama that would unfold if I slipped up again. But when the morning of Ethan and Maria's return arrived, I found myself physically and emotionally drained. Nausea, headaches, and a complete loss of appetite consumed me. Unable to focus on work, I took the day off to see a doctor. The diagnosis was crushing. I had cancer, with a prognosis of 2 to 5 months left. The tears began to flow as I made my way home, trembling with fear. When I arrived, I collapsed onto the bed, emotionally and physically spent, but just as I began to close my eyes, the door slammed open, and my mother-in-law stormed in, berating me for skipping work while the others were hard at it. Her scolding only aggravated my headache. Barely able to muster any strength, I told her I wasn't feeling well and tried to turn away to rest, but she lingered, continuing to rant about my supposed failings and even implying I wouldn't live long. I remained still, pretending to sleep, hoping she would leave. Then, in a moment of true insensitivity, She demanded to know why I hadn't prepared for the coffee break. My heart sank at the thought of her complete disregard for my condition. "Grace, I'm sorry, I just can't go shopping today. Could you please?" I started weakly. But she cut me off. "Go buy me a chocolate cake. I know you're faking. Stop pretending." My frustration bubbled over. "Shut up," I yelled, my voice trembling with emotion. "Listen to me. I have 1 month to live. Go buy your damn cake, you idiot." The words shocked her into silence. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and for a moment, neither of us knew how to proceed. Just then, Ethan and Maria rushed into the room, alarmed by the commotion. "What's going on, Susan? What do you mean, 1 month?" Ethan asked, his face pale and filled with concern. Ignoring my still shocked mother-in-law, Ethan rushed to my side. His presence was a sudden relief, and I collapsed into his arms, tears streaming down my face. "I can't take it anymore," I sobbed, overwhelmed. "The doctor said it's cancer, and I feel awful, but she just keeps nagging me about cake. Enough is enough, and stop bothering me about having kids. Just leave me alone, you idiot." All the frustration and resentment I had held in for so long finally poured out, raw and unfiltered. In that moment, I felt a weight lift off my chest. The burden of pretending, of trying to be the perfect wife in a difficult situation, had become unbearable. Finally, I had spoken the truth. As I broke down in tears, my husband and sister-in-law exchanged icy glares with my mother-in-law. The absurdity of asking a sick person to go buy a cake was glaringly apparent to them. Maria, typically so warm and upbeat, now wore a grim expression that was downright intimidating. In the tense silence that followed, my husband raised his voice, revealing something deeply personal that had been weighing on him. "You've been making cruel remarks about us not having kids," he said, his tone pained. "The reason we can't have kids, it's because of me." It turned out that about a year after our marriage, we had sought medical advice after struggling to conceive. The test showed I was fine, but my husband's fertility was the issue. He was devastated by the diagnosis and would often apologize, his face filled with sorrow. I never wanted to burden him further, so I avoided talking about children. I loved our life together and never considered leaving him over our inability to have children. We kept the issue private, especially from my mother-in-law, knowing she would only use it to judge and criticize. As my husband spoke, I saw the color drain from my mother-in-law's face. The weight of his words seemed to deflate her, leaving her speechless. Just then, my phone rang. It was the hospital, and their voice was urgent. "Susan, we need you to come in right away," the nurse said. The call sent a jolt of panic through me, and I began crying again, overwhelmed by everything. "It's okay, Susan, I'm right here with you," my husband said, his voice thick with emotion. He gently helped me to my feet, and we rushed to the hospital together. When we arrived, we were quickly ushered into a room where not only the doctor but also the hospital director was waiting. What followed was utterly shocking. There had been a mix-up with my medical records. Another patient with the same name and birth date had been confused with mine, and the cancer diagnosis was a mistake. The mistake was incomprehensible, but the exhausted expressions on the medical staff spoke volumes. The error was later reported in the news, and the hospital promised to review its procedures to prevent such a mix-up from happening again. They referred us to another hospital for further follow-up. Back at my in-laws' house, Maria had clearly taken the time to give my mother-in-law a stern talking to. When we arrived, my mother-in-law seemed diminished, almost shrinking into her chair. Maria later confided in me that she had been terrified of losing her brother's wife and that this experience had brought many uncomfortable truths to the surface. The family dynamics were changing, hopefully for the better. Amidst all the tears and confessions, something unexpected happened. As Maria, with genuine concern, asked about my well-being, I found myself overcome with joy and tears. "I'm pregnant," I whispered, my heart swelling with the news. Beside me, my husband's tears mirrored mine as he, too, processed the incredible joy we were sharing. We immediately made our way to the maternity hospital, where the news was confirmed. "Yes, you're pregnant, we can hear the heartbeat," the doctor announced. Overwhelmed with happiness, we both cried even more, and Maria, who had accompanied us, also shed tears of relief and joy. It was the silver lining we had desperately hoped for. Not long after, Maria announced her engagement to her longtime boyfriend and shared her plans to move out of state. Although her decision wasn't a surprise to us, it marked another shift in our family dynamics. My husband, who had just been named CEO, was navigating a particularly busy schedule of client meetings. His business trip, which had initially seemed like a week-long affair, was unexpectedly cut short to allow him to return home early. However, my mother-in-law was completely unaware of Maria's plans. When Maria mentioned her upcoming marriage and relocation, my mother-in-law was shocked. "What, getting married, quitting her job, and moving to another state?" she exclaimed, clearly taken aback. Maria, always the calm one, replied with a knowing smile. "Yeah, I told you, remember? But it doesn't matter now, it's all settled." My mother-in-law, dazed and confused, was left to process the news, and we all shared a laugh over the misunderstanding. When we returned home, we were greeted by the sight of the roof, which had been leaking for weeks. now fully repaired. Our room was also newly renovated, looking as good as new. We couldn't help but cheer with relief and delight. Finally, it felt like a fresh start. Despite the joy and improvements in our home, there was still some tension in the air, especially